Good day. My name is Steve McComas. I'm an aquatic scientist with Blue Water Science out of St. Paul, Minnesota. We have been doing aquatic plant surveys on Big Round almost every year since 2004. Today I was going to talk about the most recent results from our survey earlier in the year that was specifically looking at curlyleaf pondweed. Here is what curlyleaf pondweed looks like. This is a non-native species, and it has a characteristic of growing fairly dense early in the season and usually dies back by July 4th. It is a non-native species and has been in Big Round going back at least to the 1970s, where an old survey first showed its appearance. So what we've done on Big Round is we go around the lake. We have specific sites. We have 100 sites on Big Round that we sample, and have sampled the same sites every year since 2004. On May 27th, 2020, we went around and sampled all these sites to see what curlyleaf was doing. We characterize curlyleaf as either not present, no growth, light growth, moderate growth, or heavy growth, with green, yellow, and red dots. Here's what we found. Here is the boat access, and as we go around the lake, we can see that there is a fairly wide distribution of curlyleaf, but its abundance is fairly low, usually light to moderate. In 2020, that was the case. Some years there is more curlyleaf growth than other years. You can see that most of the dots are green dots representing light growth. There's a few dots that are yellow, and there's a couple red dots indicating heavy growth. Every year, curlyleaf growth can be a little bit different. For example, last year, in a survey on June 21st, found similar type patterns. Curlyleaf was widespread around the lake, but at fairly light to moderate densities. There is some heavy growth up there. There is some heavy growth here on the east side. Down here on the south side, we have a yellow dot, and over here. This is fairly representative of what we've seen as a pattern. In fact, when we look at hot spots, and that is we put the last 5 years of curlyleaf data all on the map, take an average for what we've seen over the last 5 years, we do see that same type of pattern. By that I mean heavy growth is fairly consistent. There's typically some heavy growth, if there is going to be heavy growth that year, at the boat launch, up on the north end. Over here on the east side, Indian Bay, we see some heavy growth, and then down on the south end. So this is our hotspot map, and that would be a worst case basis, but again, every year curlyleaf is just a little bit variable from the standpoint of its abundance. It varies depending on ice cover, length of ice on the lake, and snowpack, sunlight, and all those variables. Curlyleaf, this non-native species, has the characteristic of growing under the ice and is one of the first plants to arrive and grow in most of our Wisconsin and Minnesota lakes. Another thing we do is we look at the overall plant community then later in the year, and we look at the number of species that are found at each of our sample points. We kind of call that species richness. Basically, it's how many species are there per point, per site. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we can see that for the most part, diversity is pretty good in Big Round. We have 3, 4, or 5 species, aquatic plant species, per sample site. So the overall plant community is in pretty good shape. One of the most common plants in Big Round is a native plant called coontail. It looks like this, and it is fairly widespread around the lake as well. Another common plant is flat stem pondweed. It has these long, kind of stringy type leaves on the plant. This is a native species as well. It's called Potamogeton zostriformis, and it has typically been one of the dominant plants in Big Round. Another common species in Big Round is water celery. This is a native plant. It grows typically in some of the shallower water, and you'll notice that it has these wavy like leaves as well. They all come off the tuft from the bottom and up to the surface. You'll see water celery in the shallower water, probably 3 to 4 feet deep. Those are high value, high quality native aquatic plants and have great value and help really sustain and contribute to the overall healthy fish community in Big Round. So just to recap, for 2020, Curlyleaf Pondweed was widespread in Big Round Lake, but its abundance was mostly light to moderate. A fairly typical year for Curlyleaf Pondweed in Big Round Lake. So this is Steve McComas from Blue Water Science saying have a great day on the lake. One last thing, just kind of going down reviewing my backup motors. In case I ever have a motor problem, I always make sure I have some backups. I have a little Evinrude line here going back to about 1916.